Government may open railway lines to private players. Can India take UK as role model to get its railway privatized? What are the key recommendations of Bibek Debroy Committee on privatization of Indian railways? Why it is highly challenging to privatize railways in India? GS Paper 3, Infrastructure. What is the context about? The Union government is open to the idea of giving operations of railway lines to private players for enhancing competition. Railway Minister Piyush Goyal said in an interview, clearing the backlog for track renewal would be the focus, and a zero accident rate would be an aspiration. He is also retuning policy to attract private companies for modernizing railway stations. To begin with, the railways have decided to do away with the Swiss challenge model of awarding railway stations to private players, and taken a slew of measures to lease out at least 100 stations. Can India take UK as role model to get its railway privatized? In the UK, the privatization of railways was rolled out in 1993 with the separation of railways into 25 train operating companies which were privatized, separation of infrastructure from operation, and appointment of a regulator which granted licenses. The key lesson from the UK is to retain the rail track and infrastructure as a publicly owned monopoly, while opening up rolling stock operations for passengers and freight to the private sector, Debroy Committee has said in his 323-page report. What are the key recommendations of Bibek Debroy Committee on privatization of Indian railways? The committee has favored privatization of rolling stock, wagons and coaches. This has given rise to the impression that private companies will soon be permitted into profitable operations, while the public sector struggles to maintain the required infrastructure. The major recommendations are as follows. Link increase in passenger fares to better passenger services. Create a separate company for railway infrastructure. Open access for any new operator who wishes to enter the market for operating trains. Separate suburban services and run them as joint ventures with state governments. Private entry into running both freight and passenger trains in competition with Indian Railways. Separation of rail track from rolling stock. Why it is highly challenging to privatize railways in India. It won't be easy to absorb 14 lakh employees of railways in case of privatization. Besides, it will be tremendous unrest. Privatization will not serve social objectives. Areas of remote access which are not economically viable will not be touched by private sector. Military strategic objectives will also not be served. In case of privatization, at least 51% of shares will be owned by private entities and they will not work for the poor like the government. The sole aim would be to make profit. It will be harsh for various people who use railway as a main transport if the fares are not regulated.